IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Empowering series with me, Zarina. So we have yet another interesting episode with yet another interesting guest. Our special guest today is Hetal Desai. Now, Hetal is a professional leader with a decade and a half of experience in new business development, and she's done a lot of market expansions for companies. She's also managed to use her entrepreneurial skills and combine all of that with business management, and she's made some companies a huge profit in the market, I believe. Right, Hetal?
Yes.
So, Hetal, why don't you tell us a little about yourself before we jump into the topic for today?
Sure. So I've been in sales throughout my career. So it's close to about a decade now that I've been working for large giants,
right?
MNCs as well as Indian organizations. Major of my career has been in the staffing and the training industry.
That's interesting.
So hiring people, managing them, ensuring there's a smooth exit. So the entire life cycle, hire to fire is what I say.
Wow.
I've been lucky to experience that. Right?
That's amazing. So since you've mentioned hire to fire, I'd like to get into the topic for today. Let's dive in to understand why people actually quit their jobs. You know, that's our topic for today. And I think nobody could have been my guest apart from you because you seem to be knowing the entire process, right? So, Hetal, let's talk about this. We've got companies and we've got so many MNCs and SMEs around us. With a peak performance coaching background, I too come across clients. And one complaint every client literally has is the attrition rate of their company is really high. You know, they're finding it very hard to retain employees in a company. So, what is your take on that?
I agree. I think let's accept it. Every organization realizes that they have an attrition as a challenge.
Right.
But what are they doing towards it?
Absolutely.
That's another question we need to ask,
totally.
right? Frankly speaking, I strongly believe nobody leaves the organization. They leave their boss.
Right.
There is always a love for the organization that one develops.
Yes.
And hence you are joining, right? You obviously join the brand because you don't know the people you're going to work for.
True.
When you take up an offer or when you take up a job or when you're even evaluating that, what are you looking in? You're looking at the organization, the brand, what are they doing? What is in it for me? It's only when you start working with your boss,
you realize.
Your mentor, your leader, is when you realize that
I guess then that
out.
makes having a bad boss probably, one of the key factors to people quitting, because I've noticed too that people do not have a problem with the organization. Sometimes they just have a problem with their leader or their employer and the way their attitude probably is and their unreasonable expectations in general from how the employee has to perform. And sometimes I think another area is, I don't know if you must have come across this, but I think it's having a keen ear to probably one or two employees and not being able to listen to each one out,
True.
I think a lot of employees feel that bias and they feel the lack of communication with their bosses to be able to perform well.
True. I agree with you to what you're saying. There are multiple factors.
Right.
I think what I just said was one of the major factors, as you rightly said. But there are multiple factors that plays in, right?
True.
Are we getting enough increments? Are we getting the right increments?
Absolutely.
What you're saying, the biasness does come in. Typically what happens, especially you'll find this in a sales or a product-driven role, where the performance can be measured. Right?
Yes,
so
it's kind of quantitative.
True.
Right.
So there are two areas. One, which are measurable, which is your typical sales or your production, where there's an X input and an X Y output.
And you've got your assessments and analysis, evaluations.
Absolutely.
Right.
And as a leader, at times what happens, I would not always blame the leader, but what happens is when you have performers, you tend to focus more on them.
Right.
Because you feel they are your building bridges. They are the next leaders probably. So unconsciously, you tend to invest more time on those or two or three top performers that you have, which definitely the other starts feeling that, I'm not important for the organization.
A kind of neglect and a kind of,
Yes. So as a leader, it's very important for people to balance it out, right?
I think this is like having kids.
True.
You've got like the golden child and you've got the one who's always making mischief, and both need equal attention.
Absolutely.
So I guess that's how this works.
Right.
To a large extent.
Right.
True. I think you're right, because bosses tend to have their favorites And when it starts becoming obvious to everybody else, it definitely creates a different ambiance completely. And that leads me to also another thought, and I think another key factor in this area, which is people are trying so hard to impress their bosses and their employers. So the stakeholders sometimes start getting very overworked. Naturally, I mean, if I'm just looking at Mumbai, and the way we function, everybody is really fast and everything is so fast-paced. So we anyway are pressing for time. And then these guys have to go out there and impress the bosses who probably neglect them a lot of times and trying to be in their faces. They're trying to make money and make profits and do whatever they need to do according to their profile. But they're feeling very, very exhausted, Does that happen? I mean,
it does. I feel this largely happens, at least from my experience and from my interactions that I have felt. A woman feels this pressure.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Because as a woman, we always want to impress the world. Right? I think I could be wrong.
No,
but that's my
you're
experience.
quite right. I mean, we are having a woman-to-woman empowerment conversation now. Now we're talking. Yeah. So go on.
Absolutely. So typically what happens is it's the lady who always feels that she needs to be impressive.
Right.
The way she carries herself, the way she conducts, the way she's managing things, not only in office, but also at her home. Right.
True.
She's always under that pressure. She has to ensure that everybody back home is taken care of and she's the right bahu if she's met.
Yes, if she is.
If she's a daughter, she's the perfect daughter. When she comes to office, she has to ensure that her work is in place because she's always being judged.
Right.
Let's accept the fact. We are in India. A woman is always judged.
Yes, that's true.
And she has this psychological pressure behind her saying that if I don't do it right, if I don't impress my boss, then there's a challenge. And sad part is, it's not just a woman having a male boss, but this also is very evident when she has a female boss.
Absolutely. I do agree with that because I think somewhere the empathy vanishes, They stop empathizing when they're in a leadership position for some odd reason. And I've tried to put that across to so many of my clients during the one-on-one coaching that you've got to be very sensitive towards people who are coming in, especially women, not because it's the lesser known gender or we need to be dominated, but because the way we look at responsibilities in our entire dynamic, our entire ecosystem, our responsibilities are extremely different from those of men.
True.
On an average.
True. And here's where the challenge is, diversity, which you rightly said.
Right.
Is there enough women at the leadership role taking care of the other women's below the value chain?
In the whole hierarchy,
right?
yes.
So that is the key area,
Right.
We need to have more women leaders. We
Right.
need to have more women at that level who can actually create policies that will be helpful to have more women and comfort them within the system.
True.
So are we saying there are not much women coming in
Not
the job?
really. We've got couple. I mean, I think even with women in general, if you look at it the way they are in their leadership positions, I think they come in phases. For a little while, you'll see 20 years of only women bosses, and then suddenly they're all gone. So I have noticed these phases in different industries and different sectors where suddenly you've got like everybody, all the CEOs and all the bosses are all women, and suddenly there's a switch. So sometimes I think there are these transitions and these phases that a company goes through as well.
True. I think if I'm not wrong, you would be referring to the BFSI sector, which is the banking finance.
Yes, recently we've seen a lot of change there.
Yeah, and now there are none.
Yeah.
I think the challenge or the question that we need to ask here is why.
Right.
Are we developing enough women to come to the level where they can be taken care of? So this is a C-suite issue, right? We have a lot of women coming in the entry level. They start falling off at the peak of their career. Why? Either they have to get married, settle, or they are married and now that's time to bear a child.
Start a family.
So
yes.
how do I take care of that? So the problem is the organizations need to focus in that particular area where they can develop women to the C-suite, to the leadership roles, which will then can be groomed into the next level.
True. I guess here I also see this trend with men as well. off late. They're really exhausted and they also want a kind of change. And, we're talking about work-life balance, which happens to be the key to a working woman's life. Generally,
True.
Everybody is telling a working woman, or even a man for that matter, if I'm just going to be generic about things, that look, you've got to have a work-life balance. Now, my question really is, I even asked them, why aren't you challenging me and asking me that, Zarina, what the hell is a work-life balance? It's life and you've got work. Like you've got play, you've got party, you've got parts of your life. How do you put them into
two different plates?
Two different plates, and how can you weigh them in the same scale? It's not the same thing, right?
I agree.
And I think that's where people have this notion about their work-life balance, and employers, I think, need to be able to give them an understanding of how they must be able to use their life and use parts of their life effectively. And work is one of them. I think employers have a huge hand in that process. So like you rightly pointed out, it starts from the top, actually. So if we look at the top of the food chain, things are very different here and everybody's doing their own thing. So I guess somewhere that will change the picture if people start looking at these aspects and the dynamics of life in general a little more sensitively.
Agreed.
I guess, right?
Agreed on that.
Okay, so like we discussed, this entire hierarchy, it really matters because people from the top of the chain have to make a difference. And I think every company should probably start using the 1 minute rule. I'm not sure if you're aware of the 1 minute principle. It's kind of a Japanese technique wherein you just dedicate a minute to yourself, right? To do anything. So if you're getting out of bed, you dedicate a minute to clean up your room. Just do just put the duvet together and, put your comforter away, whatever it may be. You come to work, you walk out for a minute, take a minute break and come back in. Not a cigarette break and a smoke break, just a general break. So I guess a 1 minute rule really helps. What do you think about that?
Good concept. People, it's not defined by organizations.
Not really.
But I think people do that.
Yes.
So, especially in India,
People take more than a minute.
More than a minute.
Yes, they do.
So, to give you a classic example, people, if your office work hour is 10 a.m.,
right,
you will find people walking in right at 10 a.m.
Correct.
And then they go for their coffee and they will take their own time, say hello to your friends. By the time they are back on the desk, it's almost 10:30.
True.
So, I think we have our own ways to take out 1 minute.
No, but
breaks.
what really happens is, Hetal, that too becomes part of their routine.
I agree.
Right. So being able to consciously, wherein a company is telling you that I need you to spend 1 minute doing something for yourself. That doesn't have to do with you taking your 1 hour lunch break and your half an hour coffee break. It has to do with just you.
Got it.
Could be anything.
Yeah.
Just like a meditation room and a 1 minute sound for them to listen to. Anything like that,
Sure.
something that helps. I guess
I think it's a nice
elevates
idea.
things.
I think
I've introduced it to a couple of my clients and they love it. And in fact, they find it quite effective because I think here the amount of breaks we take, that leads me to actually discussing this other aspect in companies where people actually quit because there is a lot of grapevine.
Yeah.
And a lot of gossip and office politics.
True.
So have you come across such scenarios and an environment like that?
I have been fortunate not to come across such experiences.
Lovely.
I think I've worked with great organizations and these things have not touched them yet.
Okay.
Having said that, what you're saying is true. If you look at general organizations, I think, there are many organizations where you do have all these. Again, this builds up from the similar points that we discussed before.
Yes,
are we getting pampered? Is X getting pampered by the boss? Is someone getting more importance? And then that's where the grapevine starts.
Right.
So,
right.
Yes, it does exist. Nobody is willing to come out and open and say, yes, there is an office politics. But I think all of us know
nobody
there
talks
are.
about it openly, but I've realized that this can be a huge area of concern because sometimes the bosses themselves indulge in such discussions. And when that starts happening, sometimes they're kind of too careless or too carefree rather to know what's going on. They're turning a blind eye towards these things and sometimes they're too involved. So people who enjoy gossip or people who enjoy a grapevine, for them, again, you've got that extra half an hour in the day going into all these areas, right? And then you've got the people who don't enjoy these things and they're there for their job. They sometimes suffer. And I think those are the people who want to walk out of an organization like that. Sometimes when you don't fit in, you're also talked about.
Absolutely.
You're also judged.
Absolutely.
Those could be other elements for somebody having to just quit that particular place, because sometimes the environment is not conducive enough for you.
So organizations in a regular scenario, the way HR has defined is there has annual appraisals.
Right.
You appraise your employee on an annual basis. Does that really make sense? Your year is already gone by. Where the employee was feeling lost, why was he not able to do what he was supposed to do? So there should be periodic appraisals in organization where the leader, the mentor, or the boss actually sits across the table and say, hey, what's going wrong? Why are you stuck? What is it that I can do for you?
Right.
If that is done, all these points that we referred to in our previous discussion about biasness, about politically getting involved in things, can be taken care of. Because you are interacting. Is there enough interaction between the team member and the boss?
So it's got to do with a lot of interpersonal communication.
Absolutely.
It's also got to do with general transparency in an organization, I believe. Also, I'd say, you know what you've just mentioned. So sometimes there is this concept of having a stay interview and an exit interview.
Yes.
I guess this would be an aspect of the stay interview when it's not too late to understand what the pain areas are, what's going wrong with maybe the employee himself or herself, or the organization in general, or what's not working out for them, and what we can actually change. But when we come to the exit interview, it's already too late. I guess that's what you're talking about.
In fact, Gallup had done a survey in this year itself, 2018, where they figured out that also appraisals play a very important role in terms of the monetary appraisals. So on an average, it says about 9 to 10% is what an employee gets when he is appraised within the organization. This is an average that I'm talking about. And an employee, if he quits and he joins somewhere else, the minimum appraised salary would be 20% and above.
Correct.
So there itself, there's a 100% jump. So are we doing something about that? We keep talking about how do I retain? This could be one of the areas.
Right.
Evaluate your employee based on what is his market stand right now. Just don't give him 9% because that's your standard policy or that's how it is. And then you expect him to stay back. Of course not. With the kind of market competition.
And yes, absolutely.
There's someone willing to give him 20%, 30%. Am I saying that you start giving employees 20%, 30%? No.
Right.
What we need to do is probably have defined goals when you're starting the year with your team. Tell them this is what is expected out of you.
Absolutely.
Have it realistic.
Yes.
All right. You may assume that I can do X, so my team member should do X. Maybe he does not have that caliber.
Right.
Understand the caliber, understand his high points. Work around a target which is closer to what is achievable.
Right.
Make it realistic.
So having real benchmarks.
Absolutely.
And not making milestones which are, out of reach. At least instantly.
Absolutely.
It's like if I want to buy a Rolls Royce, and that's my dream car, I can't tell myself I'm going to buy it tomorrow. I'll have to start with going up the ladder slowly. I guess that is one of the areas they do not cover as anyway. I think globally we have this issue. These areas are not looked at as serious areas or loopholes or drawbacks in a company, and that's why lots of people also leave. Like you mentioned this Gallup survey, I too came across something which said that maximum people actually don't leave because of money. They leave because they don't see any opportunity for growth. They don't see any opportunity for evolving in their positions or getting better with their designations. And maybe that too is an important factor that can be covered if we look into what you've just mentioned.
Correct.
Right?
And give your employees alternate opportunities within the organization.
Right.
So if an individual has been with your organization for, say, 2 years and he's been doing the same job, it becomes monotonous at times.
Oh, very.
Sit with him, understand what are the other areas that he would like to explore. Give him the opportunity, inter-department transfers. Rather than losing a person, I always believe, externally, lose him internally to another department.
Right.
people tend to get very possessive about their team. They want that individual. So if there's a performer, I want him or her to work with me only and not let him give the opportunity which has been in some other department, thinking that, oh, I will lose a good salesperson.
True.
Having said that, you may lose him externally. There are organizations who are now internally looking at this. They do come up with IJPs, which is internal job opportunities. And I think that is working out. It's working in both the favors, the company and the individuals.
True. And, the fact that all of this actually comes under one umbrella eventually. It's a lot to do with, why people quit actually comes across as why can't bosses make people stay? At the end of the day, I think that's the question.
Yeah.
How does a boss retain an employee? Why people quit? See, sometimes you've got other, let's say, physiological reasons or social reasons for quitting a job. It could be a demographic issue, location. It could also be that your spouse or partner is moving cities and has got a job somewhere else. So you're looking out. So there could be reasons which that comprises only about 2% of the bracket of why people leave.
Correct.
And 1/3 of our lives goes at our workplaces.
I think
literally.
Very well mentioned. What people are lacking right now is the personal touch.
Right.
If you have interactions with your team members, you would have that personal touch. Then you would know what's happening in their personal life. You would be able to gauge in terms of what are the motivational factors that they have.
Yes.
Some people are motivated with money. Some people are motivated with career. Some people are motivated with recognition. Just by putting a small sticky note on your team member's table saying that thank you, good job done, makes a huge difference to a lot of people. So it's important that you connect.
Yes.
And I think, again, not because I'm a lady, but I think we women do a better job at that.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, we've got a high EQ
Yeah.
as such. Not to malign, but that is a fact. We can handle these sensitive issues sometimes a little more, subtly.
Correct.
That is a possibility, yes.
Right.
But also that when you're talking about in general people at their workspaces and the bosses behaving in a certain manner, we're talking about different physiological reasons for people moving out. One of them also is this bit you mentioned at the end, the lack of recognition, I believe.
Right.
When you're not feeling recognized in an organization, and honestly, I tell my clients in general always that you appreciate or applaud in public and you criticize behind closed doors.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly the opposite of what I'm saying, Everybody is doing the opposite.
Absolutely.
That's where the bad boss really becomes the guy who's standing with a hunter and waiting with a whip to beat you out and then send you back home. And you're sick and tired of that monotony at the end of the day. So I guess how do you think people should add recognition? I mean, we've got reward programs, we've got those employee engagements, but sometimes those things aren't enough.
So I'll tell you something which I had initiated in one of my organizations is a thank you note.
Lovely.
Right? So what we used to do is we had got bunch of thank you notes printed and kept on everybody's desk. So anybody who does something out of the way for you, I'm not saying from a goal perspective, it's just could be a colleague trying to help you for something.
Just gratitude.
You just write the person's name, mention what he or she did. Which made a difference to you, and sign it off and just go and hand it over. And that was actually when we were doing it, my boss was, are you kidding? Are we in school? What are you trying to do? I said, let's see. Let's try it for a quarter, which is 3 months, and see what happens. It made a huge difference, and we replicated it globally.
Okay, I'm going to use this idea if you don't mind. And
Sure,
I'm saying
sure.
this on record, so so no plagiarizing. Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's hold that thought right here. I'm going to take a short break, and we'll see you guys on the other end of the break.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another incredible week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. A couple of messages up top. First, we're hiring right now. We're looking to hire a producer. We're looking to hire copywriters. We're looking to hire an audio engineer. We're looking for web developers. We're looking for business people. If you're looking to work at IVM, which in my opinion is probably one of the best places to work at, then please do send us an application. Also, please do download our app if you're not listening to it on our app. Our app is available on the Play Store. And I also want to thank our sponsors this month, Savari, Storytel, and Paytm Money. Thank you very much for supporting us On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam continues his conversation with Kunal Shah, founder and CEO of Cred, a members-only app which gives you exclusive rewards for paying your credit card bill. On the Filter Coffee podcast, Ronnie Screwwala joins Karthik Nagarajan to talk about his early days as an entrepreneur and what has kept him going during adversities. And if that's not enough Ronnie Screwwala for you, listen to his podcast, the Ronnie Screwwala podcast, where Ronnie talks to me about the benefits and disadvantages of being an outsider, building a brand identity, and the learnings from collaborating with business giants across the world. In the season 2 finale of Echoes of India, Anirudh discusses the end of India's Hunnic Wars and the emergence of some of the most dynamic and powerful people and states in Indian history. It's been a great season. If you haven't caught it yet, check out the entire season. On our Parsi food show, Not Just Dansak, we have a very special guest, Kanaz Messman, the owner of Theo Broma. She talks to Perzan about keeping the cooking process basic and simple. On the ATKT Talent Tent, P-Man and Krupa are joined by slam poet Malvika. She talks about how poetry helps her cope with anxiety. On Equity Sahi Hai, brought to you by Motilal Oswal Asset Management, Shrey Lunkar is in conversation with Anupam about life insurance in India. On Golgappa, Trupti is in conversation with Mayur More of TVF Kota Factory fame. He talks about his early days as a theatre artist and shares stories from the sets of Kota Factory. And with that, let's get you on with your show.
Welcome back, guys. This is a very interesting, but I don't know how to put this across, but this actually happens to be one of the reasons why a lot of people leave their jobs or quit their jobs. And that is the clandestine affair, which goes on in the office spaces. Sometimes those are also reasons for leaving jobs. And because I'm a life coach, I get to know about these things. You know, apart from the other business coaching aspects, when you're talking about life, you realize that these are reasons.
Right.
People do leave their jobs because they have a romantic inclination. Sometimes your office space is playing Cupid's nest for you, and maybe it's illicit, amoral, maybe it's good, maybe you have a future with this person, but on an average, it doesn't seem to work out well for your personal and professional life.
So let us put this in a different perspective. All right. What is the best time of your day that you spend? Where is it? It's the workplace, right?
Right.
So typically, all of us end up spending in this era, about 10 to 12 hours in office.
Easy.
Right?
Easy 10 to 12.
And that's your best hours. The rest of the time, either you're working out in a gym or you're going home, you're too tired and you just have your meal and
you
sleep
crash,
off, right?
Yes.
So yes, you are confined in a place for 10 to 12 hours. You start interacting with people and you do come across people who you connect with, right? Why are we looking at it from a negative perspective? This could also be from a positive perspective. You have someone you have liked. You rightly said that it does move into other direction if it's not in the right way.
Right.
Having said that, I think it's for the organization to recognize these things. There are organizations who have clear policies.
Exactly my point.
Wherein they do not want to have it. They have their own reasons. I have been part of such policy making. The reason is, as you rightly said, if one is not doing good, the other starts feeling the heat.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Or if one is doing fine at work and they have had some conflicts back home, that comes back to the office.
That comes back.
And vice versa. So that's the reason why organization makes those policies that let's not have that itself. Let's bifurcate.
That goes back into the earlier topics we mentioned as well, wherein there's a grapevine and there's office politics, and then you become a part or you become a topic of discussion. You find yourself in uncomfortable positions or you feel embarrassed. And I'm not speaking about this simply from the clandestine secret point of view. I'm speaking about it in general, when we cannot differentiate a lot of times between our personal and professional lives.
True.
And we don't know if we're not balanced in the mind to be able to deal with these as separate entities and find a synergy between them. It is difficult to be able to exist in the same workplace.
I agree.
Yeah, so I think that is something. So companies do have policies, yes, a lot of them do, and they also draw certain boundaries and get things worked up for employees in general, and stakeholders have also started appreciating this. So if you find love in your workplace and you're looking at a family, that's brilliant. Well, I'm happy for you. But in general,
Choose
if
who
it's
wants to stay
affecting-
back.
Exactly.
And
who wants to
move
stay
on.
back? Yes.
And that's where the problem
question.
is, you know,
Right.
again, coming back to our earlier discussion, that's what happens. The person who would sacrifice is the women.
Uh-huh.
That's why we don't have more women in the... Sorry, I keep coming back to this because this topic is very close to my heart.
No, of course.
I strongly feel that we need to have diversity at a leadership level, right? In fact, I would just want to mention something that I'm working on since last 5 years now. It's called Asian Women in Leadership Summit.
Lovely.
It's been 5 years we've been doing this. Idea is that everybody's talking about leadership,
Yes,
women being
yes.
there and things like that. What are we really doing about it, right? We have been holding these conferences, the summits, wherein we bring people from different areas of life.
Oh, that's
so
interesting.
we get HR, business HRs coming in,
Yes.
wherein they come and say, what is it that they are doing? As you rightly said, policy making. What is it that we can do to support a woman?
Right.
From all the points that we covered, right? How
Everything,
do we
yes.
take care of the politics? How do we give her a work-life
balance.
balance? How do we comfort her within the organization?
Yes.
And so on and so forth. But where does this come from? This has to be approved from the CEO, right? Which is the business. So we also get in the MDs, the CEOs, the decision makers
Right.
onto the platform. We ask them these tough questions. Some of the CEOs who've been doing a fantastic job, they share about what they've been doing, how they have brought that change within their organization. So it's a learning for the others sitting in the room. Say, what is it that they can take back to their organization? We get political people involved.
Oh, lovely.
The policy makers, if I have to say so. We ask them, what is it that you are doing? Because as organization, we do things. But if there is something from the policymakers, which is made mandatory,
Yes.
it becomes much easy to follow, right?
True.
So this is what we do. We bring everybody on a platform. We ask them tough questions. A lot of people share what they've done. There's a lot of learning.
Great.
And I hope to see more women, because if you see 2 years back in the Fortune 500 companies, we had
Right.
more than 32 women as leaders,
Right.
CEOs, right? In a year, it just dropped down to 24.
Yes, it did.
So what are we doing it? We go back and ask the question to the lady boss saying that, what did you do? But is it her job? She's already managing so many things, right?
Absolutely.
What is the organization doing? What is the CEO doing? We talk about mentoring, but nobody talks about sponsorship, right?
Yes.
Are you ready to put your bet on a lady and say, I will sponsor her, I will ensure that she goes to the next level? Or are we doing enough coaching, mentoring, training? All these points that we keep
Yes.
talking about. If you see, are we really doing something towards it? If we really start focusing on this, I think retention can be taken care of.
It can.
Right? And if we have, I always feel, and I think there are enough surveys and there are enough articles that have come up which says that women are the best strategy designers. They are the ones who should be in a leadership role. They
Right.
should be the ones who should be taking the initiatives. So AWLS, which is Asian Women
Yeah.
Leadership in Summit, talks about this.
Okay.
We try and say, let's bring a change.
Let's bring a change.
do something. We've been talking. Let's get something on the floor and let's get it activated.
Yes, that's amazing actually. I mean, that's quite an initiative, and having done that for the last 5 years and pushing yourself and making a change, at base level and at the top level, I think that's huge, Hetal, because yes, and here I'd like to also bring in the men.
Right.
So that I can balance it out for both of us. So I'd like to bring in the gentleman who can also be extremely active in this process of making sure that these sponsorships or these leadership roles or the kind of training, coaching, mentoring that we're talking about, all of that can be done with an amount of trust and faith, because I think we all at times look for validation.
Absolutely.
We shouldn't. That's another story and another topic altogether. We all do look for validation, and that validation comes not from just your bosses or your peers or your colleagues or, subordinates. It also just comes from the fact that you're looking at people around you to accept you just for who you are.
Exactly.
Just for who you are. So I guess even the gentlemen, if they play an important role in this growth that you're talking about, it's a catalyst reaction. So there can be an escalation in the growth rate.
I agree. Absolutely agree. In fact, men have to come forth and do it.
Great.
Because
now I hear men from you. That's nice. That's nice. Yeah.
And frankly speaking, since I've been associated and since I've been very actively working on this, there are many men. Let's appreciate them. There are many men who are doing this cause. In fact, the gentleman who leads this entire initiative for us in India or Asia Pacific is a male. And even my CEO is a male.
Oh, wow.
And they have both been very supportive in this cause. They work very closely with me in driving this entire initiative. So, yes, let's appreciate men as well. And without them, I don't think the chain will be
Yes,
complete.
like I said, they can play a catalyst in this entire process. They can really escalate the growth, because having those people to validate not your existence, because you need self-confidence or self-esteem, but the existence of you in a leadership role, and to back you up and to tell the world that, hey, these people, they're out here and they're talking business.
Correct.
So that does change the dynamics quite a bit, right?
And somewhere I think we as women also take a backseat, saying that, no, I don't want to. So actually, when this entire initiative started, both of them, the gentleman who leads this entire AWLS for us and my CEO, kept on saying that, you take the front lead. Right. And I was like, no. I'm comfortable here. You guys take the lead, So I think sometimes we as women also need to break the glass ceiling.
Yes, you do.
We need to start looking beyond ourselves. We should trust and believe in our own selves. I think that's very important.
Yes.
And I think men do a very good job in telling us that we are
believing in us.
In believing in us, by telling us that, lady, you can do it.
Yes.
So
I have to give it to them, because honestly, the maximum people who have encouraged me in my choice of profession, the maximum clientele I have, the kind of people who've pushed me or motivated me, have usually been the gentlemen around me. So I've never had that complaint about, the woman aspect, but I completely get where you're coming from, because that's a majority area.
Exactly.
So I believe we should look into that, and I think you guys are doing a fab job. So Hetal, all the best on that front.
Thank you. And in fact, you should come in. So we are going to have our event, the first event in India, on the 15th of November at Four Seasons.
Lovely.
I would really invite you. Please join us.
I'll be happy to. I mean, I'd love to see this side of things, and be part of such an amazing summit.
It will be great to have you there.
For sure. Now, let's come to this last segment of our discussion. Everything put in a box, if we go back to talking about why people quit, whether it's women, men in general, we've discussed a lot of areas, and they cover a lot of internal areas too, right? One of the areas that I see specifically, or lastly, I'd say, is the corporate culture. A company's culture, just basically the values, the principles, their vision, mission, as compared to what they're telling you when you're joining, when you're coming on board. And compared to that, you look into 6 months into your job, or say 10 months into your job, and you see, firstly, the job expectations are different from the reality of your job. Then you also notice that you don't like the way the company is, just their basic feel, What is your take on that?
Yes, I think very rightly said. When we are evaluating a job, any individual is evaluating a job, first sees the brand. Is it a big brand? Is it a big name? So everything is very flowery, very rosy. Oh, wow, what a company that I'm going to join. Then they go to the role, not giving much importance, as you rightly said. You don't know what exactly is expected. So we don't have those tough discussions, because somewhere behind our mind, back of our mind, we feel that, oh, what if they judge me and don't give me the job?
Right.
So we never have those tough questions. What is expected out of me in this role, right? We go through something called as job description. We say, oh, this is very nice. This is I'm doing, and this is easily achievable. I can do it.
Right.
We see that. We meet the person. it's like an arranged marriage, right? You meet the
Yeah.
person for half an hour and you say, oh, I'm going to spend
I'm
my
ready
life
to marry
with
you. Yes.
Absolutely. So,
and then start the issues. And then you also have a honeymoon period.
Exactly.
Which is your 3 months of induction,
and
etc.
that's where you are, as you rightly said, the 3 months of induction and settling in, nobody's bothering you, you are
Right.
in a happy zone, and boom, suddenly after 3 months, the expectations just set in.
Right.
So I think one is your HR and mentor plays a very important role. So there are organizations I've been fortunate that I've been part of where there is a very clear induction process.
Okay.
So right from the person joins in, there are constructive interview process that have been defined. So we know what the expectation of the candidate is by keeping the candidate very comfortable.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So that's the stage one. Once the person is onboarded, then there is again a full-fledged process. So there is, even in the current organization, we have a proper training that has been embarked to the employee.
Okay.
Then there is something called as floor training where the people mentor each other. So there are mentor-mentee relationship.
Like a buddy
that happens.
mentor.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And then when the mentor says that he's ready or she's ready to go live is when the person is on live sales.
True.
So I think there has to be a process. Induct the person into the culture.
Yes.
That is more important.
Yes.
Because the very fact that you've hired him or her is because you know that he or she can do the job. Now what is important is the cultural fitment.
Cultural, yes.
So get the person in the culture, and you know what? It's been proven. 6 months, if a person stays with you, then the person is there for you for life,
Right.
Unless the other points that we spoke about is not
and they
taken
come in
care
too
of.
early into their zones and their marriages.
Yes. So typically, and even from, we keep talking about the employee, but also from an employer perspective, you see, the only way the employer will start generating revenue on an individual is he spends 1 year with the organization.
Right.
So it's both the sides.
Yes.
The employer is doing enough, but at the same time, the employee also needs to take care of. So it's not just that we expect the leader or we expect the mentor to keep
Yes.
coming back.
Yes.
But I think it's also important for the employee to walk up to the boss and say, can I have a conversation with you?
Right.
So if the leader is not taking that initiative, why are we not taking that initiative?
But a lot of times, Hetal, employees want to take that initiative, but bosses are unavailable, or they just become, they're so consumed. I won't say that their job is easy, but they're very consumed to be
Agreed.
able to give that individual attention. And that's where I feel that it is important for companies to invest on their employees.
Correct. Correct.
Invest behind them, invest for them.
Correct.
Which means that if you have a coach, for instance, your job, my job, sometimes our job is just to mediate issues. Sometimes that's where we are, It's not like you're adding anything, but you're at least taking away from them. There's somebody to listen to. So if you cannot be that here, at least invest in having those kind of people around.
Correct.
Where your employees can go, talk about their problem. Maybe that mediator can come to you and tell you that, look, these are the X issues with Y person, and this is what you can do about it.
True.
And after that, it's your choice.
True.
Right?
And I think, as you rightly said, organizations are recognizing this
Yes,
things
they are.
now, and hence you will see these training initiatives being taken care of, mentor-mentee relationship being formed within the organization, coaches been invited, especially for senior level.
True.
Because again, at a senior level, you feel that I'm too big a person to go and sit in a classroom, right?
Yeah.
That's when a coach comes in play. He listens, because there is a frustration at that level as well.
It is,
Who do you talk
absolutely.
to? You are alone at the top. I always say that,
Yes.
so it's always very rosy when you're looking from the ground floor.
Yes.
But when you're at the top, you're alone.
Right.
Who do you talk to? In fact, these are the people who need the
They do.
mentors,
They
right?
do.
Companies should provide external mentors as well. So a CEO, so there should be, CEO interaction sessions and things like that, where they can share, because they would be able to understand each other better
Right.
than someone within the organization, because again, there are some confidential things that the CEO cannot share with
Yes,
someone
there
at
are
the
discrete
ground.
matters, and
Absolutely.
And-
So yeah, those initiatives should be taken. There should
Right.
be external mentors being available. There should be coaches the company should hire, even for the top management. I would say, not just the
No, it
middle.
starts top down all the way,
Absolutely.
because the top is actually the bottom of the organization. In
True.
my understanding, I look at the top of any organization as the roots of it.
True.
So if the roots aren't taken care of, although they might not be seen,
True.
You don't see them all the time. You don't interact with them all the time. But they've got to be the strongest of themselves.
Agreed.
Right? So they can hold that tree and that lovely shade and the leaves and the fruits that they bear. So all of that is taken care of if we start top level. But I think all in all, we have covered quite a bit on why people quit. Starting from, let's not talk really badly about the bosses, but yes, the bad bosses, if there are any. We're talking about aspects related to just simple office politics, people being underpaid, I guess.
Right.
Overworked and underpaid. We're talking about the work-life balance. We're also talking about how women can be better and they should be pushed and motivated to be in these leadership roles and do a good job there because they're good at it.
Right.
And we're also generally talking about how a company culture works its dynamics or it works its charm on having or retaining employees. So all in all, what are your last thoughts?
So, frankly speaking, I think, as I mentioned in the previous discussion as well, that it's important that everybody comes on the same platform. Everybody works towards ensuring that the organization has the manpower which stays with them. Right from the CEO, as you rightly said, the root of the organization.
The roots, yes.
Who's the policymaker, to the HR, because let's understand, HR is more of a facilitator.
Yes.
We keep going back to HR or telling them, but they are not the decision makers, right? To the boss or the mentors or the leaders, to the employees as well. I think if everybody starts talking, interacting, sharing their concerns, discussing what can be done, having forums within the organization. We all have employee engagements, but I think we should also have some employee forums where we invite their family, where we understand them as individuals. We get to know what the organization culture is. I think if everything put together, the world will be a much better place.
I believe so, because like we discussed, half or more than half our lives are spent at work. So we need to have a good work life to have a good life in general, yes. So the world would be a better place. And going back to what you said right at the beginning about people not quitting their jobs, they quitting their bosses or leaving their bosses is exactly where we must be ending this. Thank you so much, Hetal. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you and interact with you. Such amazing insights on this topic. I think this is going to be one of my best episodes. Also, all the very best for the Asian Women in Leadership Summit and the one that you're holding in Mumbai, India, at the Four Seasons on the 15th of November. I will surely be there.
Thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing some amazing work being done by all of you. And, eventually, I guess I'll also be part of this. And the next time I'm doing my talk show, I will be talking about women only. So that's what I'll be doing at the end of this. But thank you so much, Hetal. It's been an absolute pleasure and delight to speak with you.
Pleasure's mine. Thank you.
All right, so that was our episode on why people quit with Hetal Desai, and I've had the most amazing time talking to this dynamic woman. So if you liked this episode, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me on Zarina Speaks on Instagram.
Hi, I'm Satyajit.
Hi, I'm Racheta.
We are from the Open Library Project and we host a podcast called Paperback.
Paperback is a podcast where we engage with stalwarts and experts from various industries, suggesting non-fiction titles that contributed to their journey in a big way.
We've had guests like Anjali Raina, Dr. Marcus Rani, Dr. Swati Lodha, Ambi Parmeswaran, Apurva Damani, and many more on our show Paperback. Find new episodes every Wednesday on IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
You say jogging, and I'm telling you a story about a man who dated 3 sisters. You say boss, Kurla, and it's about a guy who went out to a party where they were selling beef. This is Anand Sivkumaran, aka The Croc. My show, The Croc's Tales. You give me a word, I'll tell you a story. Words aapke, kahani aapke liye. Do tune in on Monday and Thursday on the IVM website, app, and anywhere you get your podcast from.